Hello, welcome to another episode of Namtaro Talks. Today's episode talks about urban development, just mainly based on my experience and what I've observed based on the places I've traveled to. I don't need to get super technical about this because I am not the most well versed in the subject, but it mainly comes down to accessibility. So pretty much our first initial impression of urban development is based on the environment that we grew up in, that we're raised in, whether it be an urban city, a suburban neighborhood, or even a rural area. So after a while, you come to realize what amenities are available, but also the sort of atmosphere that that kind of environment provides. I, of course, grew up in a suburban environment, so you pretty much know what that entails. The neighborhood everyone has a house, a single family home with a garage or a yard, a front yard, maybe even a backyard. And of course, the neighborhood has some parks, a school, maybe near some shopping centers. Eventually, you make your way out to the freeway. So that would be the suburbs. When I talk about an urban setting, that's pretty much in the heart of the city, quote unquote. That's pretty much apartments, accessibility to the stores. Like maybe you live on the top floor, you go down to the main street, and then there are a couple stores, and you're right in the heart of it right away. Pretty much things are more compact and dense, and most likely denser population, possibly even more crowded and loud. And when we talk about rural environments, we're not really talking about out in the middle of nowhere, but more out in the country, somewhere there's a lot of open space. Maybe you're a single home on a bunch of acres of land, typically farmers. And those are not the main three categories. I know there's something in between for all of them. And both have their benefits, both have their drawbacks. Okay, not both, all three of them. Of course, all three have different amenities for transportation. Also, transportation depends on what society or even country or city or governance that you live in. Yeah, and transportation is very important. It is the means to get from one place to another, because at the end of the day, that is the case where, I don't know, how a society functions. You know, you need to go to the store, you need to go to work, you need to go to school, you need to go to people's houses. And of course, it should be as seamless and convenient as possible. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. Ideally, it should also be safe. Of course, there are many means to do so, whether it be walking. Of course, many people drive. Not to mention, you could also bike, or some people take the motor scooter or take public transportation like the bus or the subway. Or nowadays we have rideshare programs like Grab or Lyft and Uber. Yeah, so it pretty much stems from your background, what kind of environment you grew up in. And if you didn't get as many opportunities to travel, then it's all you know, it's all you've seen. Sometimes if that's the country, then all you see is the country. Maybe you've gone to the city a couple of times. Or if you're in the city, you're used to the hustle and bustle and the easy movement from one place to another. Of course, some environments are easier and more friendly for certain modes of transportation than others. Like driving a car through a big city, it's a bunch of crowds and traffic jam and much more pedestrian friendly. And of course, certain methods of public transportation may not reach out to the more rural areas. Oh yes, trains. I forgot to mention trains as a form of public transportation, not just subways. But like I said, I grew up in a suburban environment. So as a kid, of course, you gotta walk with wherever the adults take you. Then once you get more agency, you get to walk on your own. And sometimes you have the means to, whether it be biking, or for me, it also included using the scooter or using the skateboard or eventually longboard. Yeah, and it was to school and home and to friends' houses and parks. But I admit, eventually I try to test the limits as much as possible. Like, I know this shopping center is this far away and it is not the safest. Like, there are crosswalks and stoplights and lots of cars, and is it even worth it to go that far or go that out there? Mind you, this was around elementary school. And of course, as a kid, you are pretty much at the mercy of whoever gives you a ride, and that being your parents, pretty much. Well, especially when you're in a suburban environment. Of course, at first you're okay with just going around the neighborhood, sometimes for exercise, sometimes for exploration. And of course, some neighborhoods have hills, some are pretty flat. But I also considered, what if we try to go to that one shopping center. Yes, but of course, to get to the shopping center, we gotta go through roads with a bit more traffic, and the cars are a bit faster and with more stoplights. And at that point, you can't. Well, you can walk, but it's a lot more trouble than it's worth, and you might as well ride your bike. Yeah, I remember my first time biking to certain fast food restaurants or even the supermarket. Or of course, as a kid, if you were into trading cards or you like those little like gift stores that sell stuffed animals or little pens and whatnot. There are stores like that, though they are a little bit farther, and it's a bit more work to get there. But it felt kind of empowering, It's like you have your own means to get there and get back. Well, on a bike, anyways. And where I went, there was a giant hill that you had to work with, and I remember having to walk up that hill. And when I first transitioned to middle school, I took the school bus. But I hated that school bus route because I was the last stop and it didn't even drop me off anywhere near my house. So we opted for the city bus, and it was much faster and it dropped me a bit closer to my house. And you already know, as a kid, you don't want to go to school. You don't want to stay in school. You want to get home as soon as possible. So the sooner you get home, the better. Of course, with the school bus, you only are subject to stops in residential neighborhoods where other kids live. But the city bus, they stop at many different stops with many different stores. Of course, when you're growing up over a time, like just from elementary and middle to high school, you kind of have more agency, or I guess you kind of test your limits. You become quote unquote more adventurous. Like the things that were a bit farther, you see if you can go there, whether you're willing to walk there or you're willing to brave the traffic to get there. Sometimes the places that I biked to before, I tried walking there and see what it was like. I remember one time in high school, it was a Friday, so of course no school on Saturday. So we just took the city bus past where they would drop me off at home and rode that route all the way to the end. Then we would change buses and then take that bus into the neighboring city to go to the mall. And it was pretty fun. As a kid or a teenager, you just love the mall. You like all the stores, you like the environment, you like the clothes stores, the food court, the trading card store. But even better, you got there on your own. You just spend like a few cents, a dollar or two. You're with friends. Of course, you came straight from school, so you got to carry your school backpack. Sometimes I did it with friends. I remember one time I did it by myself. At the mall, they had the movie theater, and I remember watching 2 movies in a row. Or maybe it was 3 by myself. I think I was like 15 or 16 at the time. Yeah, I probably could have went with some friends, but they weren't really interested in the movies I was watching. I think the movies were Scott Pilgrim, and there's one movie called Forbidden Kingdom with Jackie Chan and Jet Li, and Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. But at that point, you come to be aware of the different forms of transportation and their benefits and limitations and what kind of environment that you live in and what is available for you and what is feasible and reasonable for you to get to certain places. Of course, I couldn't drive at the time, or eventually when I did learn how to drive, I didn't have my own car. So it was just a matter of go wherever, whenever, within your limitations. But after you listen to a few episodes, you come to find out that I disclosed some things about myself. Yeah, of course, I went to Vietnam as a kid. Of course, I had a family in the Washington, D.C. area. So when I went to those areas, I tried to explore my limitations there. Like what areas I can travel to or what means I have. Of course, Vietnam, it wasn't in a big city, but it was a relative town, but more densely populated, but very walkable. And of course, everyone there uses, well, not the bicycle as much anymore, but usually the motor scooters. Of course, I couldn't ride the motor scooters. But I remember you just walk a few blocks out, and then there's like the local river, and a few more blocks, and then there's the store that sells like the comic books. And I bought all the Doraemon comic books. Of course, the whole country is pretty much a giant farmer's market. So you walk and you see different stalls and stands that sells fruits, vegetables, meat, lots of restaurants everywhere. And this was just as a kid. Like I say, first, third, 7th, and 11th grade. And of course, had to go wherever my parents went when I was younger. Of course, my parents would be a bit more wary of leaving a teenager on his own in Vietnam, even with my limited Vietnamese. But I remember taking the bike, my aunt's bike, and driving around my dad's hometown. Biking, that is. Yeah, eventually, after you do all this little traveling, whether it be in Vietnam or America or whatever environment you live in, you come to be more familiar with the geography, like what the streets are, what the landmarks are, what stores are where, how far things are. So I got to explore the town a little bit more like that. Actually, I don't know if I did it in 7th grade. I know for a fact I did it in 11th grade for sure. Yeah, I drove the big streets, I drove the little alleyways. Why do I keep saying driving? I rode a bike. Yeah, I rode my bike looking for a family friend's house and almost got lost because I got to pretty much the main highway and I was like, oops, that's too far. But yeah, I rode the bike to the sports equipment shop, bought some fake badminton rackets that broke in like 2 months. Went to the local park, played my badminton with kids much younger than me who were in barefoot and much better than me. But yeah, this was due to my being able to borrow my aunt's bike, giving me the chance to bike in my dad's hometown in a foreign country. Of course, at first my parents were a bit wary. They're like, "Where'd you go? Oh, be careful! Like, don't do this, don't do that, don't go this far." But then eventually they trusted me a little bit more, and I came back and they're like, "Oh, where'd you go today?" And I just disclosed to them, and they're like, "Wow, you went that far? You went to that area? You dare do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I wanted to see something new. I wanted to go somewhere new." Like, I wasn't going to be cooped up in the house all day, and that's just a couple of experiences in Vietnam. When I went to some family member's house in the Washington, D.C. area, they lived near the metro station, and that taught me a bit more about geography also. Like, okay, we boarded this station, and this is the name of our stop, and this is the colored lines, and we got to ride this line to get to this station to see this sites, and sometimes we transfer and change stations here and there. Of course, I did this when I was young, in elementary school and eventually middle school. But I went with someone else at the time. And then I look at all the different amenities around the metro stations, all the different stores and different restaurants and the mall. And the convenient thing is the metro station. I keep saying metro, but it's really like the underground subway. I see how far apart they are from each other. Surprisingly, some are within walking distance of each other. I did not expect that. Yeah, but I came to become more familiar with that neighborhood, like where all the parks are, where all the stores are, like what's drivable, what's feasible, what's not. What takes you into the heart of Washington, D.C., where you see all the monuments and the tourist sites. Eventually, as I grew older, they let me take the metro on my own. I enjoy a couple of solo adventures here, straight into the heart of Washington, D.C., see the monuments myself, see the Smithsonian museums myself, and you just trust the metro, trust the subway, trust the system, just be competent. And back then, all you had was the map and the guy announcing what stops you're at. You didn't really have some kind of like tracking system or GPS map yet. But public transportation, it wasn't limited to only Washington, D.C., even around where I grew up. Okay, you already know I live in the Bay Area, so we had the BART station. So I would hop on the BART and just like let it take me to San Francisco. Of course, in high school, there were some field trips that had us do that, but I guess they kind of taught me how to do that. So I had more agency and got to do it with some friends or on my own later. Yeah, we would take the BART straight to San Francisco Chinatown, but that was for one year. When we did the same trip the next year, some of us ditched and we went to Japantown instead. You pretty much learn the logistics of it. You buy the tickets, you pay the fare. I know it is nothing special for people who live in New York or anywhere with public metro transportation, but I guess for me it was more of an adventure because some people they take it as an everyday thing or as a means of commuting. The BART, it wasn't limited to just San Francisco. I took it to Pleasanton to get lunch with some friends one time. I even went to Oakland by myself. Well, once for a conference and once just to explore, though I knew to avoid the seedy areas, of course. And back then, the Oakland art station, it led straight to the Oakland Coliseum or the Oracle Arena where certain sports teams played. But by then, you were not really a stranger to public transportation anymore. It's like a bit of exploration and agency and adventure. And I know I've used those terms before, but I remember one time we took it in the evening as teenagers to go to see they're not really K-pop, but there's Korean hip-hop artists in San Francisco, and then we took the BART home afterward. Yeah, and then you become more familiar to take public transportation. I did it in Portland when I tagged along with my friends. Well, this is when we were a bit older. Well, I was still in grad school when they finished it, and they had to take continuing education classes. But while they were in it, I was like taking the bus and even the Lime scooter. I'll call that public transportation to different restaurants and sites and stops. Even in international trips, whether it be Eastern Europe, where there's a convenient light rail system that takes you into while you're in the Czech Republic, it takes you right into the heart of Prague. Or in Japan, you gotta get familiarized with the transportation system with every major city you go to. Of course, Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and from Kyoto branch out to Kobe and Nara. Take the JR line, do all that. Even take the Shinkansen to go in between those major cities, and maybe even with intercity travel, you can take their light rails or their buses to go in between temples if it's too far or too hot to walk in between them. Yeah, same for China. I was under the guidance of my mother-in-law. Yeah, she figured everything out much faster than my wife and I could. But it was just organized, you know. They're just funneling people from one place to another because people need to go here and there for their own businesses. I know the episode is called Urban Development, and I think I'll add the title of public transportation also. But I know I spent about 15 minutes talking about all the different ways I got around. Physically, that is. It's because I come to realize how important it is and how ridiculous and constrained and car-centric car culture in America is. And I can only speak for America because I'm in America and I'm an American. But you kind of see that a majority of America, it's very car-centric. Like, you can only go to certain places only if you have a car, or only if you know someone who has a car and you get a ride from them. That's it. There's like little to no metro, or there's little to no buses, or those systems that are stuck, they're late, or they're unsafe. Sometimes they're inconvenient. Sometimes they take you on a roundabout route and you have to transfer so many times. Sometimes they cost more than they're actually worth. So the alternative is to, oh, I'll just drive there. Yeah, you can drive there. And then you're on the road with everyone else and there's a bunch of crazy drivers and you're subject to an accident and you have to follow all the road rules and road signs. And sometimes you're stuck in traffic jam and then you gotta change lanes. And because there's not many, because apparently roundabouts are better than four-way intersections, but there's barely any roundabouts here in America. And I said that it is based on your environment. Yeah, growing up, I kind of realized that I am literally constrained to the house. They're like, oh, don't go too far. Oh, don't, because it's not safe. But I'm like, what's the alternative? You want me to stay home all day? Of course, I know they don't want you to hang out of the house somewhere and maybe encounter some shady characters here or there. But still, like, what do you have at home? And you have your computer and TV and maybe some books you got at the library. That's it. Of course, you don't always need to spend money or have money to have fun, but you just gotta get out there, you know? You don't want to see the same things every day. You don't want to be constrained to the same environment every day. I remember in Washington, D.C., I just walk out of the home and then a couple of blocks, get to the metro station, and it's near a mall. Like, you see people like feeding pigeons. You see like restaurants all in the surrounding area. There's like a local park. I remember leaving the Airbnb in Japan, in Tokyo, I believe, and just stop by a bakery that is super close to the metro station. Pick up some pastries, then hop on the train, ride a couple stops over and get to the main district. Or sometimes the stations themselves are super awesome with all their stores and all their amenities, with a bunch of food stores. It's like the station is a mall itself. Or sometimes the stations are linked with underground tunnels, and those tunnels have stores in themselves. So it's like malls in between subway stations. Yeah, same goes for China. And of course, a lot of the stores were very convenient, a lot of convenience stores. I mean, even in Japan, you see a lot of 7-Elevens, Family Marts, Lawsons everywhere. And people don't like, oh, it's too much walking, it's too much hustle and bustle, it's too crowded, especially during the traffic jams or the rush hours. But then you kind of realize that how little that we walk in our everyday lives, that we're getting too comfortable, getting too schlubby. Just eating restaurant food and grocery store food that's typically processed and full of high fructose corn syrup and preservatives. Because here, in the car-centric culture, you're like, oh my god, I have to get my steps in, I have to walk for exercise. In those other cities with the good public transportation and better urban development and higher density, where the stores are integrated with the residences, walking is a part of life. You have to walk to and from your apartments and high-rises and up and down the stairs, and to and from the subway stations, to and from the stores, to and from your school and your work. Of course, that would be for subways or buses or other means of public transportation. But with traffic, there's also cars and bikes and motorbikes. It's like there's many different options and for different situations. You're not fully constrained. There's a means to do something. And also, the metros and the public transportation, it just feeds into certain areas much faster, much more conveniently, whether it be a cultural center, a park, a shopping district, a theme park, a tourist attraction, a sports stadium, a music festival. The people, they just get there It feeds straight to it. You don't have to wait in traffic and then find parking and then pay for parking and then walk super far from your car into the venue itself and then walk back. And of course, with public transportation, you don't really have to worry about your own car. And with your own car, you have your own insurance and your own car maintenance. You gotta pay for all of that, and you're subject to be responsible to fix the car. Oh, I gotta get new brake pads or new tires. I gotta pay money to rotate my tires. Oh no, I got a crack in my windshield. I have to replace my windshield now. Oh no, I got into a car accident. I have my insurance rate's gonna go up now. Or if you are stuck with the car, you're constrained with the car. Oh no, I can't get to work because I don't have a ride there, so I need a car. But now I need to pay off that car. I have to use the money I get from my job to pay off my car payments. So it's like an inconvenient, unnecessary poverty cycle that nobody asked for, you know? Oh no, I had to pay every year to register my car, get a little sticker of that year. Meanwhile, I see so many people on the highways with cars with literally no license plates. And sometimes like the license plates, they have this one tinted like covering over it. I don't know if that's legal or not. Of course, public transportation, it is dependent on the government. And like sometimes the government contracts to other companies to keep that public transportation infrastructure intact. Like all the trains are running, all the buses are running, all the rails are working correctly, everything's as on time as possible. But in those settings, there's kind of a social contract. You gotta know how to behave, how to react, how to buy your tickets, how to pay for the tickets, how to conduct yourself accordingly. Yeah, you can't just act a fool. Because in America, there's acting a fool on public transportation, there's acting a fool while you're driving. It's like you cut people off, you flip people off. Well, they do it to you too. You get pulled over by the cops. Sometimes they're literally out to get you because they try to meet a quota. I know some people like the quote-unquote isolation, the solitude, the quiet peacefulness of a rural area or a suburban neighborhood. But I'm like, at what price? At what cost? Everything looks super boring and cookie cutter. Sometimes you're stuck in an HOA and you have to follow certain rules or else they fine you. Or in neighborhoods without an HOA, you might have that one house on the street that just lets everything go. Like it gets super messy and the house is dilapidated and condemned with weeds growing all over the yard. And I know there's benefits and drawbacks for zoning. I mean, you wouldn't want a house right next to a factory, but of course the zoning needs to be sensible and integrated. We've seen the experiment of how separate the residential areas and like certain urban areas, like having it separate. Like people all go into the urban areas, into the big cities to work, then everyone goes out to their suburban neighborhoods at home every day. And there's traffic both ways. Like why can't there should be better means to integrate it as best as possible, you know? Like you go to the local store or your job's like around the corner, like shorter commutes. Yeah, because commuting sucks. Nobody likes to commute. Nobody wants to commute. Commuting should be straight to the point. Like, okay, I do that to get to my job. And then I get home. That's it. Not like, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. Oh, I gotta merge on and off the lane and on and off the exit. Yeah, near where my parents live, there is this merge, like freeway merge. It is the absolute worst. It's literally like 800 feet to like change freeways. Sometimes I look at certain merges and I'm like, how is this even humanly possible? How can you go through this and still have your sanity and mental health intact? Like you subject yourself to this every single day, you'd go crazy. You waste so much of your life, of your time in this kind of settings, this kind of environment. Or one perk with being in the comforts of a car, of course, you get to turn on the AC or you get to listen to music or audiobooks or podcasts or whatnot. But you can also do that on public transportation too. We have headphones nowadays. Yeah, it's like everything is so logistically poorly planned because with cars, there's a lot of parking and you need parking lots and parking garages. Parking is literally empty real estate space to put a car. And that space is literally just concrete asphalt with some lines drawn. Not to mention, cars have a lot of liability and inconveniences, especially when you drive in narrow, crowded areas, especially places with no shoulders. Like if someone gets into an accident, okay, everyone's stuck there pretty much because they can't pull over to the side, and it just inconveniences everybody. Also, toll. Like I'm already being subjected to being degraded for driving a car. Now I have to pay for it just to use this road. And of course, paying for gas. Unless you have an electric car, which is slightly more convenient and comfortable. But sometimes, oh my God, I gotta find a charging station. Oh, and charging, it takes a lot longer than like filling up a tank of gas. And we want more like a mom and pop stores, like more like downtowns, stores with more character, stores that are a community institution. Not chains, not strip malls, not the same restaurants, the same grocery stores, the same like different services, whether it be electronic store or furniture store here and there, and nothing fake or nothing super boring or generic. Like you could try to build a fountain right in the middle of the mall, or have a statue or a sculpture here or there. Give it some class, give it some culture. But how about some businesses or means that people actually use, that people actually care about? Not to mention they need to make it safe, and everyone should be under the similar social contract and know how to conduct themselves in public. Because if you're disturbing the peace, if you're actively harming other people and you're pushing people onto like, the subway, then why would anyone go out in public? Why would anyone use public transportation to go to do what they need to do and go where they need to go? It's just more individualistic and resource heavy and resource dependent and inconvenient, more trouble than it's worth. Yeah, I'm not saying that everywhere should be like my dad's hometown in Vietnam or the major cities of Japan. I'm just saying there is a better ways to build cities, to zone, to have like integrate residential buildings and business buildings and like places to work and places to live. I'm not saying everywhere needs to be a high-rise apartment or super high density or lots of restaurants. I'm just saying that there are better ways to build a city or build a metropolitan area out there. It's been done. Other parts of the world has done it. It's been proven to work. It's more convenient. It's even better for you on a health basis with all the walking that you do. Because people, they need to get to where they're going. They need the services right there. They need a sense of direction. They need to be out in the environment. They need to see other people. They need to have different businesses, different character that they can see every single day. Maybe some cultural aspects here or there. Like in Japan, there's fashion heavy Takashita Street in Harajuku district, and you walk 1 or 2 blocks down, there's a Zen temple. Not to mention more sky bridges, more walkways, more means to make biking more convenient and easy and safe, and try to protect them from the cars. By that I mean, okay, so you have a lane for the car and a teeny tiny lane on the side for the bike. That biker could die very easily. Like it just takes one little small turn, one little small swerve, and the biker is dead. How about a little bit more space? How about designated like concrete dividers or something? Because it's more means for social interaction too. Like old retired people get to hang out and see each other. Like kids and teens hang out with friends after school. Like people meet out easily to go on dates. Families get to go out more easily. Like you literally just go straight there. I know cars have the convenience of, oh, you get to store everything you need into the car. But okay, once you get there, you have to unload the car, park the car. Of course, with little kids, you need car seats. And also have like real parks with better landscaping. Not just some like random ass trees here and there. And, oh, I have a big body of water. I guess I'm a park now. I mean, we kind of saw what happened during COVID. Everyone was isolated to their suburban homes. Even if they left their home a little bit, they realized how boring and lonely and empty and inaccessible the amenities were. One thing I really don't like are residential neighborhoods where they think, oh, just because there's some empty space there, I'll just build a bunch of houses there. Yeah, the nature of my job, I had to go to certain people's houses, and sometimes the house is like 5 or 7 minute drive from the main road, from the freeway. So you just like left the strip mall, the shopping plaza, you gotta drive through all these residential houses, turn on this street, turn on that street, just to get to the house, 7 minutes in. Yeah, and they're literally stuck in there. The only way to get out of the area is to drive out. I mean, you can walk out, you just take a very long time. But forget about a bus, forget about a subway. Everything is like car, and parking and strip malls and chains and soulless. There's that one picture where it's like, okay, this is America, and there's a bunch of random neon signs of all the major corporations and all the fast food restaurants and the gas stations. Yeah, I'm not saying that things need to be super dense and super urban, but it gotta have a bit more culture, more character, more accessibility, more ease, more convenience, more comfort, more fun. I admit some of the places I've been to before, maybe I was really spoiled. Like I left my family members home in Washington, D.C., and then I'm at a park, I'm at a couple restaurants, I see like the brick architecture. Oh, I know for a fact I was really spoiled when I was in Wangfujing in Beijing. I just stepped out of the place where we're staying at. There's literally 4 malls I could have went to. Yeah, 4 malls within walking distance, each with a bunch of different stores and a bunch of different variety and characters and electronics. Even a bookstore, all within walking distance. I know that's not typical. I know that you gotta be really spoiled and maybe It's for the richer people to live there or a tourist attraction. But still, you see, it's possible. Like, we weren't meant to be confined to a single family home or drive a car the rest of our lives. Like, the government and society, they should really, well, it starts with changing the mindset, that there is a better way out there. There's a better way for people to live and to integrate and to work and to get educated and to access businesses and entertainment in a more convenient, easy manner that doesn't make you want to pull your hair out with all the random fees that pop up, all the indignities that you subject yourself to just because you wanted to go to a concert or wanted to go to a theme park. They're like, oh, it's too expensive. We don't have the money to do that. I'm like, yes, you do. Because I know you have the money to do all this other wasteful stuff, like fund the military and fund wars and give tax breaks. How about bettering our lives and at least start with accessibility and convenience when it comes to amenities and transportation, making it easy to access businesses, work, school, social settings. It's like these conversations need to be had. Like, these topics need to be brought up to city council. More importantly, it needs to start with your brain. Like, you can't just be stuck in the mindset, oh, this is fine, I'm used to it. This is always what it's always been. I'm used to driving 45 minutes to work. I'm used to parking. I'm used to car insurance. I'm used to traffic jams. I'm like, no. You gotta think about what else is possible. And what else is possible? It's already being done in other parts of the world. And the people who get to experience its benefits, they are much happier. So instead of having all these little culture wars and what party's in power, urban development and public transportation is one of the more fundamental things that the government can do to improve the lives of the everyday citizens. Okay, I guess that concludes my tirade, and I'll get off my soapbox. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.